Sony is planning on shutting down the PlayStation Store for the PS3 and the PSP/the Vita. 2nd of July 2021 for the PS3, 27th of August 2021 for the Vita. You can download your purchases later if you delete them, however, so it's not all bad. However, if you want something, you better get it soon. Looks like I'll be finally downloading the Prince of Persia 2008 DLC, otherwise I'll never be able to play it. Maybe the Metal Gear Revengeance DLC as well. Gaming has been notorious for sucking when it comes to its own preservation. In order to play certain old games, you either have to still have the game and the accompanying console, or have an emulated version on your computer, which many video game companies class as illegal. Occasionally, these same video game companies will either put an old game on a digital storefront or do a remastered version, which will have updated graphics and be for the most recent consoles. But again, the fact that the majority of the time this is digital only, it's an issue. There's a bunch of PS1 games on the PS3 store, but they'll be going bye-bye when the closure takes effect. Not to mention the DLC for certain games as well. Seeing as DLC is pretty much only digital nowadays, unless you've got a special edition version of the game which has the DLC included. The irony is, the people who will be able to gain the most from this will be the ones who can sell the physical copies for large amounts of money, and to a lesser extent the people trying to emulate them. Film, TV and music also have this issue, but unlike games, they generally get reissues every few years on new tech. For example, some films have been released on VHS, DVD, Blu-ray and digital. Heck, I think some ended up on Laserdisc at some point. Music has also been on vinyl, cassette, CD and digital. Granted, they are less complicated to preserve, especially for fans. You basically just digitise a physical copy, and you're done, whether that's you burning a CD or capturing footage. It's harder for some than others, mainly due to copyright implementations, but it can be done. I've got a bunch of music gigs and documentaries saved to my computer that were only released on VHS.
You can't prove that.
As well as some old films and TV shows that you can't find anywhere else but online. You can usually find them on YouTube or other video hosting sites if you look hard enough, but there's no guarantee they'll stay on there. Video games are way more complicated. You have to emulate the hardware that ran the game. Basically, you have to have one device, like your computer, believe it's another type of hardware. So it's making your computer think it's a Nintendo 64, PlayStation, PlayStation 2, etc, etc. This is usually done by some sort of software. The specs of the device you want to put the emulator on have to be better than the original, hence why modern computers can run old console emulators relatively easily. You also need the game file to get it to run as well. This involves ISO and disk image files. Look, I have the most basic understanding of this sort of thing. You're better off looking up a dedicated video on the subject. Anyway, all of these take people who know what they're doing to get them to run. And it's not people who get paid to do this sort of thing. They do it because of the love of the medium. Anyway, back to the subject regarding Sony shutting down the PS Store for PS3 and Vita. They're getting rid of stuff that will arguably be lost to the sands of time. With rights to some games up in the air, the only way you can play them currently is to have a physical copy. This is mainly true for licensed games. Old Spider-Man, Star Wars and James Bond games are only playable now either via physical copy or emulation. Plus, there are some games that are digital only that have now pretty much disappeared because they were taken off the store. PT being a famous example, as well as Scott Pilgrim vs. the World for the longest time until they re-released it recently. And the HD remake of Earthworm Jim! Plus, pretty much all DLC will be lost as well, seeing as they're digital only, unless of course you get the special edition version of said game. I mean, Microsoft are doing a slightly better job by allowing you to play old games on the newer consoles, but you either need a pre-existing physical copy or use Game Pass, which while a good concept means you never truly own the games. And there are just some people who like to own stuff, instead of basically renting it. I'm not saying digital isn't good. I'd be lying if I said I hadn't picked up a good digital deal. I managed to get Thief and Hard Reset for my PS4 for under £2 each, and all my Steam purchases have been on sale. There's also the plus that they only take up space on a hard drive and not your house. Granted, it's not nearly as impressive looking at a library of stuff on a hard drive than looking at a library of stuff on a shelf, but that's just me. Heck, emulation is digital and it's arguably the only way that many games are preserved. And I've already mentioned my gig and documentary collection on my hard drive already. But it's kind of telling that the only way certain games are preserved are by fans doing all the legwork. But the reluctance of a lot of companies to preserve their games just seems like lost money. There will always be people who want to play old games for whatever reason. Curiosity, nostalgia, whatever. And they'll either have to use an old console or emulate them. I understand that there might be rights issues involved, the GoldenEye 007 remake for the 360 being an example. And I understand that the cost of maintaining the store might not be feasible. Surely, Sony could do something like consolidate everything to PlayStation Now. This goes for Xbox Game Pass as well. And whatever Nintendo's doing with their eShop, they should give the option to download the game from that service. Give the customer the option to download an emulator update for their console. For a reasonable price, of course. I mean, they must be emulating them somehow for the streaming option. and allow them to purchase games from there as well. The purchases would be linked to your account like they are currently, and could be carried over from console to console, including the next system. It's not a perfect solution, but I think it could work. It would certainly help in the preservation department. This is partly why physical media will never die, if nothing else for preservation purposes. There's a reason old copies of certain movies, music and even video games sell for so much. It's more impressive having a physical copy. It's similar to those lost films from the 20s, like London After Midnight. Guarantee if someone turns up with a working copy of that, it would sell far more than the cost of taking a Kardashian out on a date. Film studios at the time didn't think films were worth preserving, and now an entire generation of films are lost. I'd hate for video games to go down that route, and hopefully video game companies realise this, and they realise video games are worth preserving.